All right, Adam, welcome to the GTM Pack podcast. Super excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Justin.
Absolutely. I'm very excited for the topic that we're going to cover today because it's something that I've been seeing a lot of in the product marketing space recently, which is consulting, right? A lot of product marketers are finding themselves going solo, consulting, or fractional. And I think there's a lot of great wisdom and experience that you can share for our audience out there. But before we get into that, maybe for those that aren't familiar with you, you can share a little bit about your background. First of all, how you got into product marketing. I'm always interested in hearing the various different backgrounds that people have before they get into product marketing. And then we can talk a little bit about how you got into the consulting side of product marketing as well.
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started out, my degree's actually in graphic design, so a little bit random, but I feel like, that's an encouragement to, younger folks out there that are just eyeing up a career and, thinking about like, did I or did I not take the right major? I don't think it really matters after you get out of college. You can flex a lot, and what you'll find is that a lot of people have disparate degrees that they come off of, and they get into all different professions. And the paths to product marketing are many. I think that's what I've found over time. So I first started out in the ad agency world, and I had done a couple different roles within the big four ad agency holding companies, varying from Interpublic. So I worked with their new business team, and basically did everything that you'd see on Mad Men, building up to the pitch to the brands themselves with the executive teams. And that was one of my first roles out of school and in New York. So that was really interesting to just have that experience right away. And I feel like that got me on the path towards product marketing. And I still keep in touch with my boss from that role, Natira McDermott. Have to give a shout out to her. She's doing public speaking coaching. And something that I didn't even know at that time was that, you know, she felt maybe not confident doing the kind of speaking she was doing to these high level brand people in front of the CEO. And I was just like awestruck by that, that, she shared that. And now, she's helping other people to do that. So that was really interesting too. And we do everything from, the pitch day to setting everything up to doing executive dossiers and decks on competing agencies. So lots of stuff to do in that role. And it was a really great learning experience. And then also worked at Publicis for a while in project management, working with VIX and PNG accounts. And then also did some time with WPP, working on technology consulting with the DoubleClick ad suite, which is now Google Ads. So that was kind of the structure that got me towards product marketing. And then following that, got a call from an ad tech company while working at the agencies, Yumi. And I had not really heard of product marketing up until that point. And so had that conversation with the recruiter, and basically they were like, describe your perfect role. And that was based on my experience thus far. Obviously it ended up in design, but I found I had a natural knack for marketing itself. And so I said, I want to still be rooted in the technology. I want to also have the random seed of, conversations with different people within the day. I want to have something tangible that I produced, and that's kind of the more creative aspect of it. And I want to do a lot of different things. And they're like, well, the product marketing team might actually be a really good fit for you. Let's continue the conversation. Long story short, ended up taking that role and getting poached from WPP. Following that, that kind of set me on the path to product marketing, and I learned a lot over time. And there's so many different aspects to it, as I'm sure you've discussed on other sessions that you've had here. There's trainings, there's internal documentation, there's actually analyzing the technical aspects of the product, which is kind of more tied to product management. And then there's also working on events and with the sales team. So I think if you're not in product marketing right now, that's something you can really look forward to. Is it's never going to be boring. There's a lot of different exciting aspects to it. Um, and then following my role there, I ended up working for some other ad tech companies, Pubmatic, MadHive, and later on more into the Web3 area, and ended up at a shop called Coinme. And they're basically a cash into crypto startup. They've been in business for the last 10 years, and acted as product marketing lead there. So that was covering, a lot of all their internal, external products. And I saw the transition from the advertising, video, connected TV market, and how that blew up. And I was really excited to work with Web3 at some point. So I kind of saw that as a transition opportunity, and that's how I ended up with Coinme. And it was really exciting, the kind of things we were working on: international remittance, um, and cash on ramps into other larger crypto platforms, stable coins. So lots of different things to work with there. And then the crypto winter hit, and along with the rest of the market downturn, around like 2023, and we had a pretty large reduction in staff, and I was part of that, and that's really what set me off on the next part of my path towards consulting. And I think a lot of people have seen, throughout COVID, throughout the recent, I might say, extreme mass tech layoffs, people are looking for a new answer. When they look at full-time employment and the traditional career track, and I think a lot more people beyond product marketing are starting to latch on to fractional roles, and things that are more contract, moonlighting, part-time. And I think you're just going to see more of that, especially with the uptick in transitioning people out in lieu of AI, and reducing team size for that. They're still going to need that human element. They're still going to need the humanity, the empathy, everything else that goes into that. So I guess that answers maybe another question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a super interesting background and journey. This may be a discussion for another time, but I also was in the crypto and blockchain Web3 space, leading product marketing at blockchain.com. And crypto winter hit, and that's sort of how I went off and started Asset Mule as well. So good things do come out of these hard times as well. But kind of double clicking on that point in time in your career, right? So you're a free agent, let's say, out of Coinme, and what inspired you to get into consulting? Was it something that you planned to do long term, or were you trying to sort of do some work while you were finding your next thing? And now that you've been doing it for some time, I guess the second question is, if you think back to that time, what are some things that you wish you knew about consulting, right? That anybody who is thinking about getting into this space now or going fractional now could really benefit from learning about.
Yeah, definitely. I had always considered the consulting track and eyed up, what was later on in my career. I have to say outright that ageism also is still a thing within tech to a large degree, and it's not been addressed in the way that it should be. And I think that that's still a ways down the road. So, there's a lot of different tracks too for people, as their career evolves, and it's going to shift. The marketplace is going to shift, and you're going to evolve. And I'm not even that old, but like it can be easy, for a while in tech, feeling like, wow, I'm not a spring chicken. Like, what does that mean for my career? So, that's something I've thought about ahead of time. And then as time has gone on, I have to say to anybody out there as encouragement, don't be worried about whether you're ready. Obviously, you should have a plan B, and you should have a backup plan. You want to make a calculated risk if you're deciding to jump out of full-time work into consulting. But I feel like there's a lot of people that have maybe a similar path right now where they've found themselves laid off or, lacking work for whatever reason. And there's more and more resources for fractional roles out there. And, I've networked with so many fractional consultants, after, I've transitioned to this, and, there's just more and more of them. And I think that there's a lot of room for them as well. The logic being that for a lot of these tech companies that have massively downsized their labor forces, they're going to need to bring in people to do the work that was done before. And you know you're seeing a lot of backlash against AI right now. And do I find ChatGPT useful? Absolutely. I use it all the time. Is it a replacement for an employee? I don't think so. And especially for something as technical as product marketing, it's a tool, and that's the only way that I see it. So I think that you're going to find these companies. I think it was like Klarna. Don't quote me on that. Um, One of these larger companies that replaced a large amount of their labor force with AI, and they might find down the line that they're stuck in the mud because of that, and they might try to rehire a lot of those people that they let go. So just want to use that as a word of encouragement. And as far as qualities that you might want as a consultant, adaptability, empathy, the ability to compartmentalize, because you're going to be switching between a lot of different tasks, especially if you have like 2 or 3 clients. And then you also need to be able to work with a lot of different personalities, which luckily for a product marketer, after a couple of roles should come naturally. And I think that's a really big part of the product marketing skill set. Um, and that goes along with empathy when you're actually in the mix, and you're trying to reconcile a lot of different teams' goals and even the client's goals against each other. That you find a middle ground, and you're able to kind of make that piece. Other thing I'd say is be prepared to make a bit less money in your first year as you ramp up. But if you're remote, as I am at this point, you can location arbitrage and rent leverage, and maybe think twice. Do you want to live in a city? Do you need to live in a city? To do this, especially after the outgrowth of remote work during COVID.
Yeah, interesting. One question, follow-up question, real quick is any you mentioned some resources that are available out there for freelancers or consultants and fractionals. Any recommendations? I remember at one point when I was also post sort of crypto winter, thinking about what was next. I was looking into some consulting, and one of the questions I had was, how much should I be charging for these sort of services? Any resources that you have out there in terms of books, communities, online resources that would be a good starting point to answer some of those questions?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I would say LinkedIn communities are great. There's more and more fractional communities opening up within LinkedIn. Reddit is also a surprisingly good resource for that. Um, and of course, with Reddit's nature, it's always going to be a little bit more laid back and on PC. And then also in terms of like figuring out how you should price, always be in conversation with your friends that also work in the fractional consulting space, like to compare rates. Ask them, do you think I'm charging enough for this? Do you think I'm charging too much for it? And that's a really good way to gauge that as well. And I think a lot of people look to the loud sites out there like Upwork and Fiverr. Um, and I think a lot of those sites are a race to the bottom. The good thing is once you've established a reputation on there, then like it's really about getting your first role on there. You can get a lot more work in following that, especially after you've had a good, successful first engagement with a client, and can take on a lot more work after that. And then as far as other sites, there's very specific industry level sites for Web3. A lot of the communities are on things like Telegram. So there's even like job bots on there and things like that that you can
Mm.
see what's opening up. There's a lot of different websites for it. And then if you're another area of product marketing like SaaS or something that's more geared towards retail, there's definitely sites for that as well. And I might think of some to include in the show notes if you have them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, we've talked about how this is a growing space, right? Both with COVID and sort of the downturn in the economy, and then now with AI. One thing that I think a lot about is with more and more consultants out there, how do you stand out, right? How do you differentiate? How do you carve your space in this world that is getting a little bit more crowded? I'm curious if you have any advice on how to establish yourself in this growing market.
Yeah, I would say number one, it's not about winning awards, it's about referrals. And when people see that you do good work, they're going to want to introduce you to others. And I think that's actually the best option when you're actually um, looking to get new clients and do it organically, do it through referrals, and build on that and like be confident in yourself coming into it. I think that confidence is the number one thing that you can bring into it, and knowing the worth of your skill set. So I think that's really big. And then the other thing is bringing in flexibility where you can, um, and being available for the clients that you have. I think that you got to especially pay attention to that. Say that you're working a full-time role and you're moonlighting or something, which is becoming more common. You got to make sure to reconcile things with your day job and make sure that everything's taken care of for them, in addition to what you're doing for your client. And then if you're doing, just an example, like multiple different clients together as a full-time consultant, time block and try to hold meetings together. Say you hold like 30-minute meetings in a span of an hour and a half. Like, not a lot gets done as far as work within meetings anyway, as far as execution. So you might as well have all those conversations in one big block, even if there are multiple clients of yours together. Knock that out in the beginning of the day, so you have focused time in the latter part of the day. And I think that's going to make you more effective as a consultant.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And time management is so important, I think, when it comes to consulting. Um, Especially thinking about, one thing that I've heard a lot from my friends out there who are fractionals or have gone into product marketing consulting is this balance between business development, right? Making sure that you have a pipeline of business that keeps you active and keeps the income coming in. But also, you're going to have to deliver on that work, right? And
Mhm.
make sure that you don't get to a point where you're overextended and struggling to deliver on the expectations that you've set. Any advice on that front? How do you balance that, right? That business development time that you need, but also the delivery and the ensuring that you're not, underwater.
Yeah, so I would say the phrase "your network is your net worth" definitely applies here. And you have to be ready to table projects for later as well. So, you know, if you already have a robust network, excellent. Just keep building that. If you don't, then start building it now. If you're earlier in your career, or even if you're midway through your career, like I've seen people, uh, not even to knock them, but they'll be on LinkedIn and they'll have like 50 LinkedIn connections, and they'll be putting up posts being like, I'm desperate to find a job and I want to help them. And the best advice that people are giving to them is connect with more people, connect with as many people as possible. And that's not even limited to LinkedIn. There's other um, places that you can do that networking. You can cold email people from their website. You can connect with them on Instagram. You can do it on other social media like Telegram. Um, so there's a lot of different ways to do that. So always be networking. And then also that you have to be ready to table your projects for later. So if you are uh, tied up with work for the time being, and you're at capacity, it's good to check in with yourself and say, do I have too much on my plate right now? And while you're doing that, you might be humoring other parts of your pipeline, so to speak, of the people that referrals, etc. So keep those warm relationships, and continue to talk with those people, even every now and again, like maybe have like a 15-30 minute catch up with them, just to see how things are going. And when you're ready for those projects, the people will be in your court, and they'll be ready too.
Awesome. Do you have any tools that you recommend? We talked about ChatGPT, and I'm assuming AI tools have really changed the game in terms of how much you can manage as a consultant, right? But any
Mhm.
tools in particular that come to mind, or what does your stack look like in a way of tools that you use to, again, you know, do more with less, right? Which I think is pretty critical as sort of a solo consultant.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say time tracking is very important, especially if we're working hourly. So there's one that I've been using forever, for like over a decade. It's called Toggl. And time trackers don't need to be complicated. All you need to do is to be able to press a play button and stop it. So it needs a readout of that. And then, if you have a good one, it'll already be hooked up to like a payroll system or something like that. Hubstaff is an example of that. Um, and it'll just feed out your hours into um, like a data visualization. So whoever you're working with will see that. And then they'll also see, what your billable rate is, and, how much you've grossed within the week. And that helps both of you to, have a visual of that. I think I'd also mention, do definitely be using AI, and, it's not just for copywriting. Um, it's pretty wild, the kind of things that you can ask an LLM, like a ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, et cetera, at this point. I've used it to um, just spit out like corporate org charts when I'm doing competitive intelligence. It'll make a SWOT analysis for you. These are the kind of things that product marketers have used to have to do manually, and it's about knowing um, what input you want to put into it. It's not even about prompting. It's about, what information do I want, and do I know roughly where to locate it? Um, and for anything that you're not an expert in, you can draw in the information that way. So those are two very important things that come into mind, as well as the sites that I mentioned, and the social media earlier, to keep your pipeline going, and keep getting contacts.
Awesome. Well, this has been really insightful. As I said, I've wanted to unpack this space for some time now. Just seeing it grow and knowing more and more people that are going into the consulting and the fractional space. So, really appreciate you taking the time to shed some light on it and give us some best practices that I'm sure were hard earned. If folks who are interested in going deeper into this want to connect with you or learn from you, what are some places that they can find you or connect with you that that you'd recommend?
Yeah, definitely. So LinkedIn's a great one. Um, Adam Anthony Smith, I know there's other Adam Smiths in the world out there. You can look it up on there, and I'll include that in the show notes as well. And also wanted to mention that I'm taking on new projects too. So please reach out if you're interested in that. And then I can provide some other contact information as well.
Awesome. Adam, thanks again for coming on and sharing your insights with us. And really excited to support you out there. And hope you have a really good day.
Thanks, Justin. And do you mind if I give a couple shout outs before we close out?
Absolutely.
Awesome. I just wanted to give a send out to my partner, Elise, and to Hattie, the PMM, who I think might have been on the show before. She's become quickly a really good friend within the space. And also to Zach Roberts, who is really making some waves in the PMM space. And I'm just kind of watching their trajectory right now as it unfolds. And, there's some really bright things in the future for them. And also to everybody out there who's taking on fractional consulting right now and anybody who's about to. So you guys are awesome.
Yeah, these are some of my favorite PMMs out there. So great shout outs. Awesome, Adam. Well, have a great day and looking forward to chatting more soon.
Thanks, Justin. Talk to you soon.